Hi, everybody. I'm so happy that everybody came to join us today for the SheTek Virtual Conference. Thank you so much for being a part of this great event. I'm really excited. I know that this is going to bring a lot of value to our careers, and we're going to learn a lot together today. The title for today's session is the Continued Learning for Tech Careers and Beyond. Again, our moderator, Judith Sheft, is Executive Director at the New Jersey Commission of Science, Innovation, and Technology. The Commission's mission was to accelerate the economic development in the New Jersey area through science, innovation, and technology, including stimulating academic industrial collaboration and encouraging entrepreneurs and investors. A lot of Judith's work is responsible for bringing more technology, more innovation into New Jersey and really encouraging the growth of those businesses within New Jersey. So it's really important and really great stuff for the state and programs that will increase the amount of women in tech all over just by bringing in more opportunity into our states. Judith has also been involved with NJIT for a long time as a part of her career. And recently I had the opportunity to interview Judith about her career path, and she shared with me some really interesting and enlightening information about how tech has grown for women in the past 20 years or so. Judith's work with women in technology has been extensive. She's been a part of many different organizations, board of the Greater Newark Enterprise Corporation, Startup Network, Women's Center for Entrepreneurship Corporation, Einstein's Alley, the SheTek Power Team, and NJIT Technology Advisory Board. Also in 2017, Judith was co-chair of Governor Murphy's Transition Advisory Committee for Technology, Government, and Innovation. So again, technology and innovation and finding new things, so important to everybody that's here with us today. Judith, if it's okay with you, can I have you turn on your camera now and maybe you could introduce our other two panelists?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would be happy to, actually, I think this might be Gale. Hang on. Hello? I can't speak to you now, thank you. All right, so that was not Gale. I thought that might have been Gale because I sent her a quick email. But let me introduce our two panelists who are really wonderful friends of mine, and I am really delighted to be able to spend some time talking with them about this really important topic of continuing education, continuing skills development. So you'll have to kind of assume that we're perhaps all together around a fireplace, having a cup of coffee, tea, wine, as you get to meet these really good friends of mine. So Gale Spak established the company Build Their Future in 2019 to provide talent and workforce development training, education, and consultancy appropriate for cradle to grave generations based on what she learned over 26 years at NJIT. She has extensive experience in the area of professional workforce development and continuing education programming, which are topics about which she writes and presents broadly. Her experiences include managing, developing, marketing, proposal writing, evaluating, and implementing academic and non-credit programs for working professionals and job seekers who require new education and training to keep their skill sets at the cutting edge. The programs she designs involve collaborations among academia, industry, government, and utilize as appropriate digital instruction platforms. Before joining NJIT, Gale was the Dean of the School of Professional and Continuing Education at New York Institute of Technology. During America's first energy crisis, she served as a director of the Center for Energy Policy and Research and authored how-to reports which were sent to every American governor. Our other panelist is Katherine Kish. Katherine is the executive director of Einstein's Alley, a private, nonprofit, economic development initiative whose mission is to foster New Jersey's innovative economy and strengthen New Jersey's tech sector through collaboration, coordination, communication, and advocacy. She is also president of Market Entry, a strategic marketing and business development firm specializing in launching or repositioning products, services, and enterprises. She is a fellow of Lead New Jersey, has been named to NJ Biz Top 50 Businesswomen in New Jersey and was honored as a Woman of Distinction by the Girl Scouts and the Princeton YWCA, as well as being nominated and recognized as Humanitarian of the Year by a chapter of the American Conference on Diversity. She's active in and serves on boards of many civic and philanthropic organizations. And one of the programs that I've always been involved with that Katherine has been running through Einstein's Alley has been a real conversation that we've had for 4 years on the future of work, where she has brought in thought leaders from around the country to address this very, very important topic. So I'm assuming, Katherine, I think I saw your photo, so you are here.
I am here.
Great.
Hi.
Is Gale on yet?
Hi, Judith. It's Elaine. I just heard from Gale. And
Yeah.
No, I made it on.
Yay, okay, hooray.
Why, aren't we starting at noon?
No, our panel, no. So you got the timing a little off, but you look great and you're here. Perfect. So what we'd like to start out with as a background in terms of the conversation, Gale, if you can provide a little bit of a background on this notion of the 60-year curriculum and what does that mean for individuals?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of ways of answering that. One way is to start by giving you some very recent data about the extent of the learning community in America today, meaning students, that would actually mesh with the whole idea of this 60-year curriculum. That's 60 years. So I don't know, Judith, you want me to speak? I have some data. I'm going to have to read it, but it's hot off the presses about what people think at different ages in their life about learning. Okay.
That'd be great.
So hello everyone, don't mind me reading a little bit because I'm really bad with numbers. So there was a recent poll about the need for continuous learning, which is not the same thing exactly as the 60-year curricula, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the poll was about continuous learning and how it's helping generations, the 5 generations that I'm sure we all know about, feel fulfilled and accomplished. But many young adults feel pressured to learn new skills, so that's okay. But let me give you some of the data, because it did go by age. So everyone apparently from all ages, starting with Generation Z, which is sometimes called the I generation, to millennials, to Generation Y, which is the 30s, 40s, to baby boomers, which start in the 50s, and even to the silent generation, which is beyond 75. So the younger generations actually expect their employers to provide learning opportunities. And when asked, how important to you is it that your company provide training materials to update your skills and or knowledge? It was 93% of the younger ones, the iGens, the Gen Zs, they really were on top of this. Yes, they think it's incredibly important. The older adult, Gen Zs, extremely important, 53%. And it goes, I will get to some of the older ones, the millennials, 45%, extremely important versus very important, somewhat important. Gen X, extremely important, 33%. Baby boomers, 30%. So all levels are thinking that they need to keep learning. So the higher ed community has responded to this, some in the higher ed community has responded to this notion that everyone at every age needs to learn, but learn differently, actually. So the 60-year curriculum is being developed by a number of schools. It's in practice already. And it really is not, it is not a new name for continuing ed or lifelong learning, because it really, really is more about a change in the practice being followed today within universities and how they deal with the different generations of learners that we have. So let's think about it for a minute. I bet many of you on this call, and hello to everyone, have or hope to have an undergraduate degree, a 4-year degree, let's say. Well, most universities in New Jersey and in America focus everything on the 4-year period. 4 years. But the 60-year curriculum is focusing on people between the age of 15 to 75. Why? Why 15? Because universities focus on in getting youngsters in high school interested in going to college, so they work with colleges. And it goes basically a 4-year undergraduate degree. So all this focus of a university, and I think those of you who have got those degrees understand that that's really what it's mostly about. The bread and butter is the 4-year undergraduate. There are masters, there are Ph.D.s, but the bulk of every school is really in that 4-year program. Well, so if we're talking about 15 to 75 years of life, there's a gap of 56 years in learning. And that's what the 60-year curriculum is focused on. And really it is thinking about how to shift, but not undercut, but shift the focus of just 4 years into the broader length of time. And what will it take? Right now in universities, there are a couple of units that really focus on these different, the 56-year gap outside those 4 years of undergraduate learning. And they tend to be units called continuing education, professional education, something of that sort, as well as some colleges have special programs working with high schools. Sometimes they're called pre-college programs, but they're really interested in doing that. And other parts of a university that focus on that, except for those 4 years, and even those 4 years, but longer, alumni relations. So the 60-year curriculum is really about reshaping how a university works so that the perspectives and knowledge that come from these often reviewed as stepchildren organizations within a college are able to share how they have operated. So basically, 60-year curriculum is about shifting how a university is organized so that people at all ages of their life, which is why I went through some of the generations, have different needs in how they want to learn. Some of them, particularly at the older ages, get enormous enjoyment out of learning. Learning for learning's sake, not learning to get another job necessarily. But the bulk of others are really looking for a job and to keep their job or to upskill their ladder. So that's what the 60-year curriculum is about. I'll give you some examples, and then I'll turn the panel to your next question, Judith.
Great.
So some examples? Career services. Every college has an office of career services that typically becomes the most active when juniors and rising seniors realize, oh my God, I need to get a job. And that's when they start interacting with that office on their college. Well, in the 60-year curriculum, the work that that office does starts getting integrated in the first year, the freshman year of college. So they team teach with the faculty who are talking about the concepts and the theories, but the career service people are beginning together with the faculty to relate to how this is what's needed in your local community with the jobs that are there. That's one example. The other one that I'm sure we'll talk about during this conversation has to do with terms that many of you have heard about, alternative credentials. it's quite clear that older generations, not that 4-year, 18 to 22, 24-year-old group, they want to start learning in smaller chunks, because that's all they need. They have some gaps that they've discovered in the world outside of college. And so that's why you're hearing about a lot of credentials, credit-bearing, non-credit-bearing credentials. They're smaller chunks of learning that resonate very well with what the outside world is saying. These are the new skills you need to know to keep an upgrade and climb that ladder in your work. So there's a lot of that innovation going on, which is part of this 60-year curriculum idea. And the final thing I'll say about this right now is that this is true if colleges are beginning, and some are across the country, to more institutionalize these stepchildren groups within their facility, within their institution. Those of you looking for tech jobs, you might start considering that you will now, without a Ph.D., without a master's, be able to teach the different generations through these kinds of new programs that are being launched. So teaching in the tech world is huge, both at the collegiate level and in New Jersey. There is a requirement now, state requirement, that every high school have at least one computer science course. And guess what, my friends listening, there are not that many people equipped to teach computer science or any of the computing sciences available. And there are prospects there. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit, Judith, with what the 60 curriculum is about.
Great, Gale. Thanks for that background set of perspectives. And I think part of what Gale was also talking about is when you think about it, not only from the university's perspective, but you as an individual need to think about, how do I need to be continually, constantly learning? It's not like I only have to focus on what did I learn during those 4 years, but how do I continue my learning journey throughout the rest of my life. And to really piggyback on one of the comments that Gale had talked about, she and I, when we worked together at NJIT, had been involved in a grant that was sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor, and we were providing retraining skills for mid-career individuals in the IT space. And some of the courses that we wanted to teach involved some of the newer programming languages, Ruby on Rails and Python, some of the things that the tech companies are finding particularly important. And when we went back to the university faculty from the computer science department to see could they teach those skills, it was like, we don't know how to do that. And Gale and I said, don't worry, we'll put an ad on Craigslist. We'll find young people, newer people who have those skills to be able to do that teaching. Now, I want to ask Katherine, a question, because we've now talked about needing to really learn throughout your entire life. And during our pre-call, Katherine had talked about the word joyous, and with respect to with respect to learning. So I can think about some of the situations that I find learning really joyous. Maybe I'm learning a new hobby, a new skill, something that is bringing me pleasure. How do we bring those elements into the work situation when I've got to learn something that I need for my job?
Well, good morning, everybody. I guess it's still morning. I'm delighted to come in on the tail of the 60-year curriculum and the idea of joy. One of the very, very strong words that we hear these days is adaptability. Another one is flexibility. Another thought is that we may be buying education sort of like a retail product. Right now I'm looking at dishwashers because I need to replace a dishwasher. Well, we also can be looking at credentialing and other educational opportunities in that same way. What fits your life? What fits your lifestyle? What makes you happy? I don't think I'm telling any secrets if I say that Judith and Gale and I are, shall we say, experienced people. We've been in careers for a long time, and I know that it's sometimes boring to hear people talk about their journey, but I think it's interesting. Just in my own case, and I think in the others too. I've taught K-12. Because when I first joined the workforce, that was really one of the few things that you could do. I've been in corporate life. I've worked in broadcasting and publishing and technology. I am an entrepreneur. I then had a different stage. I created my own company, and it's been going for 30 years. I am an association executive running Einstein's Alley. That's one life with a whole string of different experiences in my career. And at each point, I've moved because I was flexible, adaptable, and because I got joy out of the next opportunity. And I think one of the things that I heard Gale say when she opened her remarks was that younger people, Gen Z, et cetera, are kind of looking for their employer to provide opportunities or to provide direction. And I guess I'm of the mindset that you are in charge of your own life, your own career. You are your own strategy officer. You are your own leadership talent. And you've got to be thinking of how you want to direct your life, because, I mean, who knew we were going to be dealing with a pandemic? We've all had to be adaptable in that sense. And Judith talked about the fact that Einstein's Alley, the organization that I am the executive director of, has been dealing in and around the topic of the future of work for now 4 years. And I sit here listening to people out in the workforce. I mean, Credential now has a future of work officer. Other companies are really addressing the future of work in a big way. And I'm hearing predictions and theories that we had 4 years ago coming to pass today. So I think in addition to being joyous, in addition to looking at a broad range of opportunities, you also have to think in terms of the whole breadth of your life. Your career is a component of your life. But you know, one of the things we've been talking about for a while is the possibility that we'll be moving toward a 4-day week. Who knew that we would be moving to all of this remote job work? What it gives you is the opportunity to move time around, involve different experiences. You're really in charge of your life in a different way. And we think that this remote work will continue. And that gives you the opportunity to rearrange time. So for someone like me, I'm very old, but recently I took a course in blockchain technology because it was something that I really didn't understand. And I figure if we're going to be, if we're going to be getting requests online to send $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, we better know what that is. And but I also took a course in the New Deal and FDR and what the New Deal meant, because both of those things affect our lives today. We are living through another time in current life, in current history, where some of the practices of the New Deal have become relevant again. We've got to separate things like benefits from a career. You don't want to be getting your health care through your employer. That's very dangerous in a time when we're going to have multiple jobs. We're going to work for multiple corporations. So we have to look at life, I guess, holistically. And when you look at it holistically, there's sadness, but there's also a lot of joy. And I think that a lot of that joy can come from learning and growing and adapting.
Great. Well, thank you. So I think, one of the things...
I just want to add, Judith.
Go ahead.
So something that Katherine said about you are the master of your life, that is so aligned with this 60-year curriculum, because really it is a matter of universities being less university-centric, that 4-year period, and making it learner-centric, which means the learner drives. In fact, some people are thinking about this whole thing like learning a la carte. So you take one course from one school, which is perfectly happy. You're just taking one course or one certificate, and another little cluster of learning from another place. In fact, a couple of years ago, the president of Georgia Tech wrote a whole piece about learning a la carte and comparing it to a high-end gym or a physical therapy place where you fix one part of your body with one at a time. Any event, that it's so aligned with what you were saying, Katherine. So I'm sorry, Judith. Yeah.
No. I was going to say, so with all of this learning activities that people need to do, they also need to perhaps be taught how to learn. And so there may be time management skills that people need to think about doing to understand for themselves. If I'm going to be masters of my own learning activity and I'm going to be doing an online course that is run at sort of asynchronously so I can log on at a time that suits me, you need to be able to make sure that you're managing your time. You may not have a parent or a teacher who's kind of reminding you of things that you need to do. Additionally, there's some technology skills that you need to be able to master. I signed up for someone's course at University of Alabama recently. I got into their online learning platform, and I don't know what I did, but all I know is I only got like one lesson and nothing else ever showed up. Ooh. So somehow it was either something that from a user-centered perspective, I did wrong. So do we need to teach people really some skills about how to learn? I know when you might have gone to a university, sometimes their freshman seminars are courses that are really trying to help the students adapt to being now in the university environment. So there may be some skills that we need to teach people about how to go about learning. Is everything similarly to Dr. Google? If I can't figure this tech thing out, am I just going to Google, how do I get my picture to show up on Zoom? How do I change my background on Microsoft Teams meeting? Comments on, do we have to teach people how to learn?
I would jump in here, Judith, to say that clearly K-12 is a critical learning time for people. And I see, we all joke about, do you have a teenager or better yet, a 10-year-old in your family who can figure out how to hook up this and make that happen? I think that's a critical time to teach children those kinds of skills. It is tempting to go to Dr. Google. I swear it has become a component of my brain. I reach for a factoid and I go, oh, I don't remember that, but let me Google it. Right. There it is. And it's wonderful. YouTube, my goodness, you can find out how to install anything or do anything or be anything on Google, or on YouTube, which is wonderful. But I think your component, we used to, 1,000 million years ago when I was in elementary school, they spent a lot of time teaching us the Dewey Decimal System. Most of you don't even know what the Dewey Decimal System is, but it's the way you categorize books in a library and general pieces of information. Today, we don't need to learn the Dewey Decimal System. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad I learned it, but we don't need to anymore. But your comment about learning methods, learning platform skills, learning how to use critical pieces of technology for the general audience, I think is very important. And I really think that needs to be emphasized because, we are finding, here we are looking at reopening schools, and we're finding that a great many students do not do well with remote learning. And so the question is how can we create either a hybrid model or some mentorship that goes along with that remote learning to give people the tools that they need. we don't all learn quickly, and we don't all learn in the same way. So multiple modalities are important, and I think being able to be guided in learning techniques is a very important point.
Great. So Gale, what does this really say for employers as they're looking to develop training programs for their workforce to keep them up to speed? Do they need to do gamification? Do they need to think about both hard and soft skills, from the employer's perspective? And I know you've done a lot of work where you were helping companies develop customized training programs, both for incumbent workers as well as new workers coming into jobs. Can you comment on it from the employer's perspective?
I think employers, as well as individual learners, both need to learn how to explain what they don't know.
Right. Good.
And so I don't see it as very different in many ways. Just to answer the question that Katherine was addressing, there is so much information out there now. Many companies are talking about the importance that their employees have what are called soft skills. Some people call them power skills, but it is, critical thinking.
Yes.
It is things like good communication skills. It is having this digital literacy that everyone needs to have now, because we are a digital world for sure. And these are not technical courses that you would learn a specific skill. So there is a lot of work on both sides, but I think the issue really is there is just so much information out there that the company doesn't know even how to find the right topics to be taught to their employees, and the learner doesn't know where they can even get some of these skills. So what this means is that there are a number of third-party kind of intermediaries coming in there, advocates, trying to bridge this gap. So for example, our United States President recently issued an executive order which said that all federal jobs, and that is the largest employer beyond doubt across the country, and they're good jobs usually, all federal jobs, except for those that require a license like a doctor or a lawyer, now have to focus on skills rather than the possession of an undergraduate degree. Okay, can you imagine the upheaval in how do you define what those skills are, and how does a learner, someone who wants a federal job, even find out that this is the new name of the game when they're writing their resumes? So I'm trying to answer the question. It's just so much information. It's how you can get to that information. And I think you need intermediary groups that really focus on bridging the gap between the two.
Again, Gale and I did a lot of work together when we were at NJIT, and one of the programs that we were developing, I was involved with managing our tech and life sciences business incubator, and the companies, these small startup companies, were looking for new people who wanted to either volunteer or work in their startup businesses as a resume activity while they were looking for perhaps other full-time jobs. And we realized, Gale, to your point, that we needed to focus on skills as opposed to what somebody's title was in another opportunity. And so you may remember we ended up working, with that intermediary IQ4 who was trying to develop for us a database where people would say, I can program in Python and this is my level, and then the company would say, this is what I'm looking for. Not that I'm necessarily looking for someone who had that particular job title. So that is so, so incredibly important. So what kind of advice would you give to people who are becoming self-directed learners to make sure, because as you say, there's so much stuff out there, whether I look at Coursera or some of these other learning platforms, some of which are free, some of which I can pay. Which ones, what advice would you have for someone who says, hey, I really believe I'm missing this skill, I want to learn project management, or I want to learn how to give better presentations, or I want to learn personal branding. Some advice about how to figure out which activity they should focus on to make sure that they're spending their time and their money on skills that industry is going to value.
As a non-academic, I'll take the first crack at that, which is you want to go to legitimate sources for information. And I think the fact that our universities and especially our county colleges in New Jersey have really, really stepped up to guide learners. They're beginning to get it in a big way that self-directed learning is key, and that they are a reputable source of learning. I think they're also beginning, Gale mentioned it a little while before, they're beginning to reach out into the learning community, or the teaching community, the learning community, for other resources, and in essence, applying their imprimatur to those organizations. So I would go first to our trusted brands for education before going out into the wild west of many companies offering various kinds of credentialing. But Gale is the authority on that for sure.
No, because the new world is not just the educators. They have to now work with the real world outside. So no, you're as much an expert as I am, Katherine, and Judith for sure. But yeah, the way of figuring out what skills you need to acquire is a complicated question. And I think that is your question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where to acquire them.
And where. So I do have some tips. The labor departments of each state, including ours, which is the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, they are really so into data analysis now. And they know what kind of companies are in each county, each town in our state, along with what kinds of jobs they are looking for. And often they just have the companies describe their jobs in terms of skills. So one tip is to kind of look at what kind of programs and grant programs a state labor department is putting forward, because they're going to say, we will fund your education in healthcare, in IT, in manufacturing. And if you are going back to school, if you're reskilling, upskilling, new skilling, you need money. It's different than the 4-year undergraduate or 2-year undergraduate experience where there is some financial aid for learning. There isn't much for what we're talking about even in the 60-year curriculum, because it takes other parties to change that. So take a look, because they're going to tell you where they know, based upon data, which is just reinforcing in a different way what Katherine is saying, where there are jobs that you can get into with the skills that are needed. There are also, so that's one place to look. There are also lots of books out there about how to really use LinkedIn, for example, to find and be found. So I hope that many of you are using LinkedIn, but that's another way of figuring out what you need to learn. I can tell you, just scan Google some of the, what some of the big corporations are doing. So for example, Microsoft just announced they're going to be spending $25 million it's 25 million people, I don't know how much they're spending, to teach people that aren't even working for Microsoft yet or ever digital skills, and they're paying for it. So these are the kind of headlines, because that's where there are jobs. There are jobs in cybersecurity now up the gazoo. You cannot find enough people. And by the way, COVID, all the data is showing COVID is disproportionately hurting women more than men.
Right.
I know we have a focus here because we are SheTek. And that means that if you are a woman looking to upskill, reskill, climb the ladder, whatever, in tech, this is the time to go for it, because you will stand out more than others, because it's a really difficult issue. So that's some quick answers on that one, Judith.
I would also add that there are county level resources.
Absolutely.
I serve on the Workforce Development Board for Mercer County, the capital county, and there are one-stop career centers. There are career counselors available at the county level. Also, the county, either the freeholder, depending on the style of government in the county where you live, you may find that there are economic development officers who sit on top of county data in the same way that the Department of Labor at the state does.
They are connected, yeah.
Of course. And
they get the data from the state.
Now, the problem is, as we well know, for people who are trying to get unemployment right now, you can't get through on the phone or any other communications tool to the labor departments, because they are swamped. So you need to rely on first cut on their available online information, which is plentiful.
Absolutely.
So really kind of also in line with that, I was reading an article this morning in Forbes Women that was talking about the networking gap. And this woman was describing, she had graduated from Duke University. She went back for a seminar at Duke, and one of the executives from LinkedIn was giving a presentation, and the executive said that she went back and kind of looked at her calendar for the year and realized that all the people who had reached out to her to ask for informational interviews, to kind of just get networking, get some career advice, were basically, other than two women, were all white men. And she said, wait a second, something is wrong here. We need, as individuals, to kind of take a pledge to say, we're going to help ensure that a networking gap doesn't exist. And so she was proposing, and I believe LinkedIn has really started this, and they're pushing other corporations to do the same, to ensure that when you're hiring for jobs, you make sure you've got a really good, diverse pool of candidates, that you make sure you reach out to individuals who don't always look like you, to ensure that you're helping get information out to the widest number of people in the population. And I found from some of the other programs that I did where we were working with entrepreneurs, again, sometimes women and underrepresented minority entrepreneurs didn't have as strong networks as the sort of stereotype white male entrepreneur in a hoodie, to be able to get the mentoring that they needed to get access to capital. So I think we need to really kind of all take that pledge to be sure that we're helping, taking the call, whether it's 5-10 minutes, helping advise someone in terms of directions that they want to look to go. So I now want to switch to a question that we hadn't talked about really on the pre-call. And I'd like to ask you, because I know you're both really very well read and so forth. Like, what books, what magazine, what podcasts are you listening to kind of give you that broad scan of activity of what's happening in the world?
Well, one thing that I would suggest is that we have a wonderful resource in New Jersey called New Jersey Spotlight. It's a group of reporters who used to work at local newspapers like the Trenton Times and the Star Ledger that are still in business, but other local newspapers that essentially have disappeared. And it is they ask for a subscription, but it's a very well-written local news source, as is New Jersey Biz, as is ROI, another one kind of like that. Support your, I mean, this is just in general. Journalism is so important. Local journalism is so important. So if you can support your local, subscribe to your local newspaper. Subscribe to the New York Times if you can. It's expensive. Subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. Subscribe to the Washington Post, the Philadelphia Inquirer. Those big media outlets are doing an enormously important job in our society, not just related to employment, but related to governance, related to innovation, related to so many things that we need information about. It goes to be well read, to be current on news. It goes to that business of adaptability and flexibility, because if you don't know what's going on around you, and so many people do not tune in. I mean, we have no excuse. You can watch cable television 24 hours a day. You can listen to, there are marvelous podcasts about, you can choose your, it's dangerous, but you have to be careful that you don't choose someone who only speaks to what you believe in. You need to sample multiple kinds of opinions. I will say, there are some people who, my goodness, watch, this news channel or that news channel exclusively. You can't do that. You've got to sample. You've got to really think about yourself again as a self-directed learner. So you want to find all the things that are available to you. Gale?
Gale, any comments?
Oh, sure. everything that Katherine said, I would certainly applaud and agree with. But what I do is, besides listening to podcasts, I am subscribed to exactly the kinds of things Katherine said. But in addition, since I am an educator, there are very specific digital newsletters that I do read. Things like Inside Higher Education, University Business Officers, Chronicle of Higher Education. In addition, From Evolution is a very good one. It's spelled EVOLLL for lifelong learning. Evolution is a very, very good one that is really talking about how learning is a lifetime, and how universities and people have to change their focus to make that happen. But once I read these things and listen to these things, I then start following up on certain things that are just, my antenna come up. That's new. That's going to disrupt. So things that I'm following right now are artificial intelligence, how it will affect, particularly as a result of COVID and all digital learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain. My God, if we're going to have a 15 to 75 year span of learning, it has to be authenticated in some kind of blockchain records, auditing, so that you have a profile of everything you've learned, which will help you with your next job or keep your job or go up. So I then pursue it and by finding on my own other pieces that really speak to these things that are my antenna going up about. Because I actually think, you mentioned gamification, Judith, that's been around a long time, simulations, that's all about using the rules of playing games like poker and stuff like that to very serious, for example, engineering topics, which could be boring, but it makes it less boring if it's a game that students are playing as they're learning. But it's a whole nother realm when you can use all the senses through, for example, augmented reality or virtual reality. The virtual is the one where you put the goggles on, and it's a whole new universe. But believe me, if you're trying to learn something that, for example, involves danger, like in a electrical engineering course, you know, if you touch a live circuit, you could be electrocuted. You can feel this without getting hurt. For real, your heart pressure, your heartbeat goes up. It's how people learn, and people do learn differently, as I think Katherine, you know, made mention of earlier. People. So those are the things, and that's what I would do. You know, see something that really interests you, and then start really drilling down and finding it by Googling it or whatever, you know, or talking to experts.
So I guess I'd like to also, you know, remind people, don't forget your local library. Some of the libraries have online digital access to many of the publications that Gale and Katherine talked about. Some of them are, you know, you may not say, maybe I can't afford, or maybe I don't want to, I'm not able to pay for a New York Times, Wall Street Journal subscription. You may be able through your local library with your local library card. They've got licenses to be able to get you access into those kinds of magazines. Some of the other tech magazines that I personally look at is Wired magazine. Another one, MIT has a tech review, again, where they're talking about things that MIT University is seeing out in the out there. There's another sort of techie publication, GovTech Today, where again they're talking about what are governments needing to do to digitize and take what they were doing to make them more into that skills base. So that those are many other places to take a look at items, and then different conferences. Again, I can't tell you how many different right now, because everyone's moved many of their meetings to online events. You're going to be able to potentially participate for not too much money or no money at all in certain events where, again, vendors may be looking to provide information about capabilities. So that those are some of the other places I would encourage people to take a look at. I found in the morning when I take my my morning walk, I'm listening to podcasts, and so Reid Hoffman, who had been involved with PayPal and LinkedIn, has a podcast called Masters of Scale. And what I find interesting about that one is he's talking to other entrepreneurs and other learners about things that they're doing. And part of the recent set of podcasts they've been doing is how are they dealing with the whole COVID situation, and how have either businesses, when Katherine talked about being flexible and adaptable, how are some of those things coming to bear? So
may I also add something, Judith, before we go on? I think, again, I'm going to be the proponent of fun here.
Yeah.
I think there's something else. I think there's so much that a library can introduce you to, just in terms of broadening who you are. Because if we think about what's going to benefit your career, it's things like empathy, it's your emotional intelligence, it's the soft side of being a human being, it's being able to work in a collaborative team, it's being able to cooperate with each other. And sometimes you can learn those things vicariously through experiencing great works of literature. You can. I'm a fan of mystery stories. I love detective novels. I read them like eating candy. But you learn things. You learn how people interact. You learn the social skills that not all of us have the luck of having come from families that taught us that. So there are other places where you may have to learn those kinds of skills, how to reach out to another person. And books, novels, great literature, they can all help. And that's part of that broadening of who you are. And employers are looking for people who really can reach out and work together well. That's going to be maybe the most critical skill going forward. You can learn technical stuff, but that business of being the kind of human being that other people like to be with is an important component of your career success and your life success.
I really appreciate those comments, Katherine. I think it is, critically important because, as you say, many of the jobs that people are going to be in, Meg told us she's a community manager for the SheTek community. Who would have thought when I graduated college that there would be even something called a community manager, or someone who's responsible for social media and all of these different tools and techniques. And as Katherine says, while those things are going to be changing and you can learn those things, you also need to be sure that your soft skills, I think Gale called them your power skills, that those are the kinds of things that people are able to augment both hard and soft to really become a total package. I think we are now at the point in our conversation where we're going to open it up to Q&A. And
Judith, I just want to add another job title that no one would have expected would be so popular. Instructional designer. These are the folks that help our educators, K-12, higher ed, really understand how to produce a quality online learning experience. And it's a different talent than knowing very deeply a subject that a teacher wants to convey to a learner. But they're called instructional designers, and oh my goodness, are they in high demand right now, as you can imagine.
So I'm taking a look at some of the things in the chat, and I see someone has also called out another organization, the New York, New Jersey Women in Tech chapter. Kathy Smith runs that, and they've run a number of programs. We had them, when we were doing in-person meetings, when I was at NJIT, we had hosted some of their meetings, and now they've done a number of online virtual seminars. I think someone had talked about, cybersecurity being critically important. I know they've run a number of sessions around cybersecurity recently. So I would certainly, encourage people to take a look at that organization. I also see a comment. Someone that says, "Why are we calling it soft skills? Why aren't we just calling them professional skills? Why is it soft versus hard?"
Well, I would just answer that by calling them life skills, because you need them not only in your professional life, you need them in your personal life. They are a part of who you are. So professional skills, we can certainly learn, and many of those skills serve us well in our professions, but I think they also serve us well in our lives.
Right, okay. So someone is asking a question about where are some places, someone says, I've got some of these technology skills and I'd like to think about becoming a teacher. And I know, Gale, you had mentioned that earlier, that schools need to have how would they go about finding that? I mean, I'll start by telling a story. I had worked for AT&T for a number of years, and when I left AT&T, initially I thought I would become a middle school math teacher because my undergraduate and master's degree were in mathematics, and I thought I still remembered enough of that level math to be competent at that. And so that was what I thought about doing. And at the time I was reading, this was before the Monster and all of these Indeed and and online platforms, and I was just like pulling up the Sunday Star Ledger looking for teaching jobs. Where would someone look for those jobs right now if they want to get involved with teaching?
Well, first, it's not about looking for those jobs. In New Jersey, you need to be licensed to teach. So the first place to go is to the New Jersey Department of Education. There is a program called the Alternative Path to a Teaching License. Since perhaps some of you on this call are undergraduates, But if you are at a school that has an education department, that's where you would start to take all the courses that are needed to go through the regular channel to become a licensed teacher, which involves a test. But I suspect, and I've heard from Meg, who probably is on this call, I suspect we have people who are finished college on this call, and you want to get into teaching. And that's the alternative path. It does require taking some courses, not a whole degree, that has to do with pedagogy and certain basic things. So that's the first place to look. In addition, there are teaching positions with some of the third-party training providers that are very popular and who have partnered, that are teaching some of these short digital skills. And if you know, if you have that background, that's a different ball of apples. You can become an instructor online for some of these kinds of companies that are out there that are teaching. So that is a way, and I do want to emphasize, if you reading the general magazines and newspapers that Katherine talked about, clearly many teachers, K-12 and higher ed, are choosing to retire during COVID, which is leaving a big gap for openings in the coming years. So I hope that answers the question. Go for this. Look on New Jersey Department of Education. Look on the alternative route. It's not a lot of courses you have to take. A lot of community colleges have the right programs. They're all authorized. You do have to take a test. It's offered frequently, and then you look for all the open jobs. So and they would be, you just Google them in a district you want to work in, as a matter of fact.
If I might add, I think another path to explore is internships. Getting some real experience in a field can be enormously powerful in helping you direct your energies and in helping you express your credentials. Another thing that I think we should mention is that there are educational institutions like Thomas Edison University that give you credit for life experience if you can combine what you have done in the past, what you know, what you can provide. The fact that you know these things, you can test out of certain things, and you can earn degrees and credentials based on things you already know. So be sure to look at programs like not only internships. Patty Grimm just suggested that becoming a corporate trainer, working in a corporation, teaching something is great experience. And looking at schools like Empire State in New York and Thomas Edison in New Jersey are just wonderful opportunities for getting credentials for things you already know.
And then I think at universities there's what they call adjunct instructors, where for certain classes you're potentially able, without teaching degrees, without a Ph.D., to be able to come into a university and be an adjunct instructor for certain courses across a variety of skills, where they're always looking for individuals, whether it's from the business school or computer science, different areas where, again, someone who is able to bring their professional work experience to bear. The other thing I'd like to remind people about is to think about volunteering for different organizations that you're passionate about that might need some help on the technology side. So whether it's your church or synagogue or a nonprofit that you're working with that might need their website tuned up or might need help with something on the tech side, that if you can do certain projects for them, that then gives you some capability and ability to have additional skills and demonstration of impact on a resume that could then potentially lead to other job opportunities for you. One of the other tech newsletters I read is Technically, and there's like a Technically Delaware and a Technically Philly newsletter. And the one from Delaware that just this morning had a session for 4 different programs for nonprofits to be able to learn how to use technology in their nonprofit. Because again, frequently nonprofits might be operating paper and pencil kind of operation. And as they look to get into technology, those of us who have some of the technology skills, that might be a place to bring those skills forward. Let's see.
Judith, that's a wonderful idea, because right now, do you know there are 35,000 nonprofits, not-for-profits in the state of New Jersey alone. Most of them are running on fumes right now. They are desperate for financial support, but they are also desperate for skills support that Judith just mentioned. And that's a wonderful way to do good and make good at the same time. You're improving your skill experience, and you're also doing something that's right for the world. So that's a great idea, Judith.
Right, and then I see, Carol Mateus is reminding that when you're thinking and you're looking for opportunities, be sure that you've got all of the right words that we're using. Carol, I know from some of the work that she has done, is involved with aviation and drones and big data and kind of the future of transportation. So think about, one of the things we didn't really talk about is that technology really underlies all of the different industries that you might be interested in. So depending on what you're interested in, you could work on supply chain for the fashion industry. You could work on something in, big data for healthcare to help them with drug discovery and development. So having these underlying technology skills is something that every industry is going to need to be able to utilize moving forward. Just checking to see if there's anything else in the chat that we want to call out.
Hey there, Judith. Just we had one more question that I don't know if we entirely covered. We had somebody ask before about what you guys think about having a Coursera type of approach with constant recertification at a relatively low price. Do we?
I'll turn that over to Gale.
Actually, I think that's a great idea, but it's not just Coursera. Again, that's part of this initiative called under the big umbrella of 60-year curriculum. It really is about taking a bunch of these not-for-credit, shorter learning experiences. Coursera does have some good courses, but it's not the only one. And then a university, a college, stacking them and counting them, all of what Katherine was saying about lifelong experience and other kinds of experiences, and counting it towards a degree. Because what we're finding now, the data is showing that most working professionals are really looking to take these shorter term, non-credit professional development, very focused classes, but they understand the value of going and getting a degree, but they want to do it later. So they don't want to enroll right now, and it's a lot of money, a lot of time. They don't have it because there's an urgency now with what we're going through in this world right now. So colleges are being pushed to integrate a Coursera course, just as an example, either into and used in the curriculum of a school or just counted instead of a class. So my best advice is, yes, go and do those things, stack them up, and find a school, and it could be Thomas Edison in New Jersey or others, who are saying, okay, this will give you that credential, which is still the platinum credential, and it will be for many years to come, even though many of us would like to make sure people understand there are alternate credentials that are equally as salient in this world as an undergraduate degree. So yeah, do it. Do it.
What do you think about badging, Gale? You know, getting, you know.
Yeah. Badging is an interesting thing. A lot of companies are turning to that. And again, that's going to depend on this blockchain audit where there is a repository of where all the badges that you've earned over your lifetime can be in one place so that you can show it to a prospective employer. I know this, I know that. Some schools are putting these badges even onto their official transcript that you've learned something that's outside the traditional that we've been doing for hundreds of years way of learning. I think it's one way of going. I can also see it, I was another example of how to start people realizing that it's not one-time learning and it's over, it's continuous. Think about if a school, a college, has as they're entering class, if they could come to campus, which they can't, but even had a game which was to help students, new students, know what buildings, all the buildings are and what happens in the buildings on a campus. And you get a badge for that. And the school keeps a record of it through some mechanism that they have a database to do that. Wouldn't it would be amazing to keep those people, those freshmen, involved and engaged with their school, their alumni, when they've graduated, to go and see these pictures that they maybe took of these buildings that they had to identify. What's going on in that building? So there's a lot of tricks to using badges, not just to indicate you've learned something new and important for a potential job and for your own self-enlightenment, but also to keep people engaged. And it's a technique for kind of hooking a learner into the fact that, oh, I got a prize. I have a badge. It's sort of like the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts where you keep going. So yes, I think it's worthwhile, but a school or an entity has to have the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, to support keeping those records clearly and available and accessible throughout life. And we don't have that much yet, but I think blockchain is going to help us there.